morning, pre-cal. All right, today we're going to talk about some logarithm graphs. So if you will get out your Unit 5 packet and go find worksheet number 3. This is the one that we were working on Monday. Find that worksheet right there, and we are going to work numbers 19 through 22 together. So back here on the back with the logarithm graphs. Okay, if you're still looking, go ahead and pause the video, but I'm going to go ahead and get started. So very much like the exponential graphs, we're going to work with our 3 key points. And I want you to be able to make a table for those 3 key points. What I want you to think about as you're doing these is that a logarithm and an exponential are inverses of each other. So let me remind you that an inverse is very simply a switching of x and y. X and y. Okay, so as you work through these, I want you to think about what your table was for your exponential, and then we're just going to switch our tables, x and y, to be able to find our logarithm graph. So it's a lot easier to find an exponential table than it is to find a logarithm table. All right, so with these, we're going to be working with a base of 3. So let me start by thinking about my exponential that was 3 to the x, and this is what we worked with on Friday. So with my exponential, I always worked with -1, 0, and 1 for my x's, and then when we had -1, 3 to the -1 power was 1/3, and 3 to the 0 power was 1, and 3 to the first power is 3. And so those were my 3 key points when I talked about my exponential with a base of 3. So what I'm going to do for a logarithm, this one on number 19, by the way, is our parent function for when we are working with that base of 3. But very much like our exponentials, that base number can change, so be very careful with that. Okay, so what I'm going to do for my logarithm is I'm going to take my table up there that I just made for 3 to the x, and I'm going to switch my x's and my y's. So now I'm going to have the point 1/3, -1, and 1, 0, and 3, 1. And those are going to be my 3 key points that I use when I'm working with my base of 3, my logarithm with a base of 3. Okay, so for my parent function, I'm going to graph these 3 points. So I'm going to go to 1/3, -1, which is just kind of right here. Okay, so 1/3, very small, just kind of somewhere right there in between. And 1, 0 is right here. And 3, 1 is right here. So those are my 3 key points that I'm going to work with. And here's what a logarithm graph looks like. We're going to go this way, and it kind of flattens out up there on the top. And then as you come this way, it's going to go right up next to my y-axis and kind of be a boundary right there. So very much like when we talked about our exponential graphs, we had an asymptote on the x-axis. Now I'm going to have an asymptote on my y-axis. So again, everything x and y is going to switch. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my asymptote right here, actually right next to my y-axis so that you can see it a little bit better. But it's actually right there on my y-axis. Okay, so my exponential graphs had an asymptote on the x-axis. I'm going to switch that, and now I'm going to have one on my y-axis. Okay, the other thing that's going to switch is my domain and my range. Okay, so the other day we talked about that with the exponentials, the domain is always -infinity to +infinity. So in this case with my logarithms, that's going to be on my range. And you can kind of see that on my graph, that it's going to go down and down and down forever, and then it's going to go up and up and up forever. There's no upper boundary or upper restriction on that. Okay, then with the domain is going to be restricted now by my vertical asymptote. So in this case, that's on my y-axis, so at 0, and we're going to go up to infinity this direction. Okay, and then when we talked about our exponentials, we talked about all of them having a y equals asymptote. With my logarithms, we're going to have an x equals asymptote. In this case, it's right here where x is equal to 0. Okay, so they'll have a vertical asymptote. We can put a little v next to that to remind ourselves that it has a vertical asymptote, which crosses the x-axis, so they're going to be an x equals line. Okay, so other than the switching of x and y, everything's really going to be the same when we talk about our transformations. Let's jump over here and take a look at number 20. So on number 20, I'm adding 3 to the inside of my function. So remember that adding and subtracting is going to be the opposite from what you would think, going right or left. So this one's going to move to the left 3. Right, so that's my transformation here, is left 3. And I'm going to use these same 3 key points for this graph over here as well. So these 3 key points go for both of these graphs. And so I'm going to take those 3 key points and I'm going to move them all to the left 3. And you can do that first, or you can draw your asymptote first. I like to draw my asymptote first. And so with a vertical asymptote, I'm going to need to move left or right to affect my vertical asymptote. So on this one, my asymptote is also going to move to the left 3. So 1, 2, 3 is right over here. Okay, so grab your highlighter or colored pencil or whatever and draw your asymptote also to the left 3. And again, I like to draw it first just because it gives me a little bit of a boundary to work with, just like with my exponentials from Friday. All right, so I'm going to start at 1/3, -1, and I'm going to move over to the left 3. So I'm going to go 1, 2, 3 right here. Okay, then I'm going to take my next point, 1, 0, and I'm going to move to the left 1, 2, 3, so right there. And then I'm going to take my last point of 3, 1, and I'm going to move to the left 1, 2, 3. Puts me right there on the y-axis. So that one's going to go that way, and again get towards my asymptote without touching or crossing, so a little bit like that. Okay, again, it's my domain that's affected by my asymptote. So with my asymptote being at -3, I'm going to be at -3 up to infinity. My range for my logarithms will always be -infinity to positive infinity. And my vertical asymptote is crossing the x-axis, and so that's going to be at x equals -3. Okay, let's jump down here and take a look at number 21. Okay, so on 21, I'm still working with a base of 3. You kind of want to check each time because they will change here in a few minutes. So I'm still working with a base of 3, but this time I've got a negative out front. And remember on Friday we talked about that negative out front is going to make this thing reflect over the x-axis. And then I've got a -2 on the outside of my function. That -2 is going to make my graph move down 2. So on the outside of your function will be outside of parentheses, like this one right here. And that's going to make it move up or down in the direction that you would think that it's going to go. All right, so let me get my table going for my 3 key points. So I'm going to start with my x and my y's. I'm still working with a base of 3, so that's still going to be 1/3, -1, and 1, 0, and 3, 1. But what's going to be different on this one with that reflect is I'm going to make a third column that is -y. So since I'm reflecting over the x-axis, I'm going to flip this thing down, so it's going to affect my y values. So my -y column is now going to be 1, 0, and -1. So I'm going to go find the point 1/3, 1, and 1, 0 still, and 3, -1, and then I'm also going to move those points down 2. Okay, so I'm going to start at, let me do my asymptote first. So my asymptote on these only gets affected by a move left or right. I'm not moving left or right, so my asymptote is still going to be right here on the y-axis. So that did not move this time. And again, I'm going to draw it just a little bit off to the side so that you can see it. But it's actually right there on the y-axis. Okay, so I'm going to go to 1/3, 1, and I'm going to move down 2. And then I'm going to go to 1, 0, and I'm going to move down 2. And I'm going to go to 3, -1, and I'm going to move down 2. So when we flip upside down, it looks kind of like this. It kind of makes a little L shape, like that. Okay, so that's what it looks like when it flips upside down. Okay, my domain, it works with my asymptote, so 0 over to infinity. My range is always -infinity to positive infinity. And my asymptote is going to be right there on the y-axis again, so that's going to be at x equals 0. Let's work one more together. I'm going to take a look at 22. So on 22, I'm still working with my base of 3. Okay, still working with a base of 3. I don't have anything in front to stretch or shrink or reflect, so I'm going to start right here with this minus 2 is going to make it move to the right 2, and my plus 4 is going to make it move up 4. I must have put a 4 on there, up 4. Okay, again, a move right and left is what's going to affect my asymptote. So let's grab our highlighter, and I'm going to move that thing to the right 2. So that's going to be right here. Here's my vertical asymptote this time. Okay, I'm back to just kind of a basic base of 3. I don't have any reflect or stretch or anything, so I'm going to go back to working with 1/3, -1, and 1, 0, and 3, 1. Okay, so I'm going to go find each one of those key points, and then I'm going to move it to the right 2 and up 4. So I'm going to go to 1/3, -1, and I'm going to move to the right 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, and then 1, 0, I'm going to move to the right 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. And 3, 1, I'm going to move to the right 2 and up 1, 2, 3, 4. So it'll look a little bit like that. Okay, I did move my asymptote, so it is going to affect my domain. So my domain is now going to be from 2 over to infinity as we move this direction. My range is not affected, negative infinity to positive infinity, and my asymptote did move over to cross the x-axis at positive 2. Okay, so here's what I'd like for you to do. I would like for you to work together to try to figure out numbers 23 through 26. 23 through 26, and notice that your base number has changed to a 2. Okay, so be very careful with this. All of these have a base number of 2. Okay, I'm not sure if you can see this, but as you work together, I want you to go over to Schoology, and also in the Wednesday folder, there's a logarithm worksheet group answers. And so as you work on these together, I want you to go in and answer these questions where it will ask you to sketch the graph for number 23 and find the domain and the range. As you put those in, go ahead and use INF for infinity, or if you need negative infinity, put the little minus sign in front of infinity, and no spaces in any of that. So you don't need to put a space after the comma or anything like that. If you run out of time today, I think you'll have enough time to do this in class, but if you run out of time, I have made it to where it's not due until Friday. So that gives you a couple of days to get those answers entered. Okay, but work together, try numbers 23 through 26, and then everybody individually enter your answers into that Schoology quiz. Okay, then your homework for tonight is going to be on Unit 5, Worksheet 4, to answer these logarithm graph questions. And notice that it says to please state the domain and the range of each. Okay, so your homework for tonight is worksheet number 4. I'll post my key in the Schoology folder labeled while I'm absent under this unit where you found this video. Okay. All right, y'all have a great day.